All right, here we are on a Sunday morning, and it turns out that Kirby Smart knew what he was talking about all along when he kept on telling us that it's hard to go on the road and win games in the SEC week in and week out. We had two shocking upsets go down yesterday. We had Ole Miss going down to the Gators in Gainesville, and just an absolutely horrible and embarrassing ending for Jackson Dart. And then, even more shocking than that, Alabama goes on the road to Oklahoma, favored by 2 touchdowns, and is only able to put up 3 points against Oklahoma. Now, I know that the Ryan Williams being covered up, the illegal touching call, was total bullshit. And those are the same officials that overturned the pass interference call, which was a non-reviewable play in the Georgia-Texas game when Georgia went on the road to Texas. Those officials have got to be fired. That is the worst officiating crew in the SEC. That is 2 game-changing calls. They got away with it in the Georgia-Texas game. Georgia was still able to come out on top. But that Ryan Williams touchdown being called back yesterday for illegal touching was total bullshit. There's just no other way to say it. That crew has got to go. Like, the SEC officials should be the best in the world. And what's gone on in those 2 games with those 2 calls is just totally unacceptable. Those guys have got to go. People have got to be fired today in America. We have got to quit putting up with this. People not being good at their jobs and being able to stick around. I don't want to go off on a rant about that, so I'm just going to cut it off there. Those guys have got to be fired, though. They got to go. So Ole Miss goes down to Florida on the road at Gainesville. Jackson Dart was totally defeated, was literally on the bench crying with about 3 minutes left to go in that game when he threw the first interception. When he threw the first interception, he goes to the bench, literally was almost in tears. The quarterback coach has to come over and console him and say, dude, listen, the ball hit the ground. You're about to go back out onto the field. Like, get your shit together and get ready to play. He's able to get him together. He goes back out there, almost throws another interception. Very next play, he does throw it straight to Florida. The game's over. He goes back to the bench in tears. So just a total collapse by Ole Miss on the road at Florida. And this Florida team has been steadily improving over the course of the season. That DJ Lagway kid is a very good player. Their freshman running back is a very good player. They've been playing some good defense. And, that should just go to give Georgia more credit for what they were able to do with the toughest schedule in the country by far. By far. Nobody else had to do what Georgia did. And for Georgia to come out 6-2 in the SEC, going on the road to play in everybody's primetime night game, it's just got to be commended. Like, Georgia handled that Florida team. Now, Lagway did get hurt in that game, but Georgia was able to put down a Florida team, and, Georgia's most hated rival in Florida. Georgia was able to handle them. Georgia was able to handle Tennessee at home. Georgia was able to sneak out a win when they had to at Kentucky. They fell on the road at Alabama. They got down 28-0. I still can't believe that happened. They got down 28-0 on the road at Alabama. Fought all the way back to take the lead in the fourth quarter of that game. They went on the road and beat a Texas team, the number 1 team in the country, by 2 scores. On their home field at 7:30 with game day there. Totally, just had total control of that game the entire time. The Georgia-Texas game was never in doubt, and Georgia handles their business there. So I'm proud of what Georgia was able to do. I'm not going to lie. This season has been beyond frustrating to watch with some of the offensive problems that we've had on this Georgia team. The offense just not being able to stay on schedule, the drop passes, the wide receiver play, no depth at the running back room. Offensive line is drastically underperformed on the season. Injuries left and right. Our 2 wide receivers being kicked off the team. Our 2 best wide receivers, most capable, the tallest wide receivers, the most explosive playmakers that we were going to have are kicked off the team. ETN goes down with the injury. Like, this Georgia team has had to overcome so much adversity. And for them to be able to go 6-2 with the hardest SEC schedule, I've got to tip my hat to Kirby Smart, that coaching staff, and the players. I can't imagine the toll that SEC schedule took on those guys' bodies. And honestly, do I think that Ole Miss is better than Georgia? I really don't. I think that Ole Miss caught Georgia on the right day. I think Georgia was out of gas. They had been on the road for 36 days. They hadn't played in Athens. I think it was 36, 38 days or something like that. I think Ole Miss caught Georgia at the perfect time, and they just looked like they were out of gas. I mean, the Georgia players, the look on their faces pregame for the Texas game, like the players were locked in and ready to go. The intensity was brought up a whole nother notch in the Texas game. I didn't see that in the Ole Miss game. We just didn't execute. We didn't play well. Hats off to Ole Miss. They beat us. They, beat us by 2 scores. They handled us the same way that we handled Texas, the way that Ole Miss handled us. That game was never in doubt. Ole Miss was the better team on that day. But they dropped 3 SEC games. It's hard to win, every single one of your SEC games. Even if you beat, the big time games, the big time opponents, it's those games that you're favored. It's those games that you should not lose. And that's what was so frustrating when Mark Richt was here, is that Georgia would drop what seemed like a game they should not lose every single season under Coach Richt. And then moving on from that to the Alabama game, I'm still totally shocked that Alabama went on the road, was favored by 2 touchdowns to beat let's just call it what it is, a bad Oklahoma team, and was only able to put up 3 points. Alabama wasn't able to do anything offensively. Oklahoma just totally shuts them down. And I just cannot believe that Alabama dropped that game in that fashion. Bama, to me, when they're playing well, they look like the best team in the country. But what happened with the Vanderbilt game, what happened last night on the road at Oklahoma, I just cannot believe that's the same team that beat us and handled us and was up 28 points on us. This has just been the strangest college football season. I mean, there's been so much inconsistency. I'm going to stick really just to the SEC. There's been so much inconsistency inside the SEC. You look at the inconsistencies with Georgia, with the problems that we've had on offense. Our defense has taken a step back from years past. We're not that dominant defense that we have been in years past. That shows up in every stat line defensively for Georgia. But then they're able to go on the road and totally shut down the number 1 team in the country in Texas. And they put on a lights-out defensive performance. Our pass rush was able to get home for 7 sacks in that game. I don't even think we had 7 sacks on the season going into the Texas game. And it's just wild how it swings back and forth like that. And then you look at Bama. Bama beats Georgia, at home in Tuscaloosa, is up 28-0 on them. Then turns around and loses to Vanderbilt. Self-inflicted wounds, turnovers, bad offensive football, bad decision-making on the road at Tennessee. Falls to Tennessee, turns around and absolutely destroys an LSU team, 7:30 at night down in Baton Rouge. Totally handles that game and embarrasses Brian Kelly and LSU. Jalen Milroe scored 6, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 touchdowns in that game. Bama back to looking like the most dangerous team in the country. Turns around and loses to a horrible Oklahoma team. Ole Miss, loses at home to a bad Kentucky team. Then turns around and is somehow able to handle a Georgia team. That game was never in doubt. Ole Miss just beats the life out of Georgia at home. Then turns around and loses to the Florida Gators. Like, just the ups and downs of SEC league play this year is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. But the Georgia win at home over Tennessee turns out to be an even bigger win and even so much more important than any of us could have even imagined. I don't think anybody yesterday thought that Georgia was going to, that we were going to go to bed last night with knowing that Georgia was going to the SEC championship game. Just the series of events that had to take place, I didn't see Bama losing that game. I thought that it was possible that Ole Miss would lose to Florida. I didn't think it was, likely. I wouldn't have bet on it, but something just told me, like, man, if Ole Miss doesn't go down there and play their best, like this is a hungry Florida team, this is an improved Florida team, you can be beat by this Florida team. Georgia could have been beat by that Florida team. Lagway, it really has helped that team. So Ole Miss goes down, then Bama goes down, Texas A&M goes down to Auburn. Auburn took a 21-0 lead against the Aggies. Who saw that coming? Bama has got to beat Auburn next week, or they're going to finish the season with 4 losses. And Auburn's got to win that game for a bowl eligibility. So a very interesting Iron Bowl shaping up there for next week. But Georgia punches its ticket to Atlanta with that win over Tennessee. Turned out to be even more important than any of us even thought or could have imagined. And so Georgia is going to play the winner of the Texas versus Texas A&M game. Played at Texas A&M next week. I expect game day to be there. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed. That's just what I expect, the way that Michigan is down this year. I don't think they're going to be at the Michigan-Ohio State game. Is Ohio State going to finally be able to beat Michigan? We'll see. But so the main question is for the Georgia fans, how do we feel about going to the SEC championship game? Because for a large portion of the day yesterday, we thought, okay, 2 other teams are going to go play in Atlanta. They're going to get beat up. We're going to get a home playoff game. Sit at home, sit at home while they get beat up in Atlanta. And we'll wait for our home playoff game, or we'll go on the road and play Penn State. Either one doesn't really matter to us. But I think the majority of Georgia fans were happy not to have to go play in the SEC championship game. And then by the time that we go to bed, Georgia's going to Atlanta. So now it's a matter of, who would Georgia rather be matched up against, Texas or Texas A&M? And, for me personally, I think that I would rather take the matchup against Texas. And a lot of Georgia fans are going to say, well, it's hard to beat the same team 2 times. That is true. I just think Texas is a really good matchup for us. I don't think Georgia's defense matches up well. Historically, it has never matched up well with a mobile quarterback, which Texas A&M has. I just like Georgia's matchup with Texas better than I do A&M. I like both matchups, really. I trust Kirby Smart in either of those matchups. I think Kirby Smart is the better coach. I think we've got the better coaching staff. I think we have the better roster, either team that we play. But I just like the idea of the Georgia pass rush. If we can stop the run against Texas, I really like our chances for the pass rushers, for the edge rushers to get home on Quinn Ewers again. Now, will it turn out the same way? I don't know. But I like how Kirby Smart was able to totally shut down the Texas offense in that first game. Looked a lot like what Kirby Smart has been able to do to Josh Heupel in his time, in Heupel's time at Tennessee. He's never been successful against that Kirby Smart defense. At Neyland on the road, they've never scored more than 17 points on a Kirby Smart defense. And this isn't even the most talented defensive roster that Kirby's had. We've taken a step back talent-wise on both sides of the ball. That's just a fact. If we did get matched up with A&M struggles to throw the ball a little bit more. But I just think, we've just never played well against a mobile quarterback. Let's just call it what it is. I think that Georgia, you got to be able to stop the run in both matchups. But I don't like Georgia's defense to stop Texas A&M's quarterback. He really has played well. I've been watching him play. Texas A&M has really come along since he's been the quarterback. I know that Auburn just put a whooping on him, but just for whatever reason, Georgia really struggles stopping that mobile quarterback. So I would want to be matched up against Texas. But either way, I expect Georgia to be favored. I expect Georgia to win the game. The few things that I'll say about the UMass game yesterday, the first quarter was horrible and egregious on the defensive side of the ball. The tackling was god-awful. Everything about stopping the run in the first quarter against UMass was horrible. I hope that's the wake-up call that we need. The few positives that I saw from the game, I like how Carson Beck had more touchdowns than he did incompletions. I know we were playing a far inferior opponent, but I like Carson Beck being able to get his confidence going into the Georgia Tech game. And trust me, nobody inside the Georgia building, I don't think any of the Georgia fans are going to look past Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's coming in here to ruin your season. So I expect Georgia to take Georgia Tech very, very seriously. I'm going to that game. I think a lot of Georgia fans are really pumped up for that game. Everybody's excited about going to Atlanta, but everything that I've seen on Facebook, online, on Dog Nation, on Dogs HQ, everywhere I look, everybody knows that Georgia Tech game is the biggest game of the season because it's the next game. And Georgia Tech's going to come in here and try and spoil Georgia's season, try and snap our home game winning streak. We are at 30 wins consecutively at home, which passes the 1994 Florida Gators. So we're 30-30 with Florida. Alabama has the longest home win streak in SEC history with 31. That was 2015 to 2019. If Georgia can get one more win at home this season, which I expect them to, Georgia will be tied for most home wins in a row in SEC history. Another big accomplishment for Kirby Smart. I say this from time to time in my videos. Georgia fans, enjoy Kirby Smart while he is here. This is the best it has ever been for us. You're watching over at Bama what happens when a great coach leaves your program. Kalen DeBoer has been a great coach everywhere he's been. He's no Nick Saban. Whoever comes after Kirby Smart is not going to be able to fill the shoes of what Kirby Smart has done at Georgia. All the Georgia fans owe Kirby Smart a debt of gratitude for what he's done for UGA football, bringing 2 national championships, over 100 wins, SEC championship. Just really enjoy Coach Smart while he's here. Something just tells me, and I hope I'm wrong, but something tells me Kirby's time, I don't think he's going to coach another 8 years at Georgia. We'll see. We'll see. I hope that I'm wrong. That would be 16 years. If he coaches another 8 years, that would be 16 years at Georgia, and we'll just have to see what happens. It's got to be hard the time spent away from family, being the head coach at Georgia and working as hard as Kirby Smart does. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm going to hop over to Facebook and do a live video over there talking about all this same stuff. Congratulations to Georgia for getting to Atlanta. I'm excited about the game. Always excited about an SEC championship. I hope we're able to get another one. I like either matchup, but I would love to play Texas again in that game. Let me know what you guys think about that game. Everybody have a great Sunday, and we'll be back later for another video. Thank you, guys. Go Dogs.